I'm just going to come out and say and be as frank and truthful as possible, but personally speaking, I'm really tired of all the misinformation and all the hate that is directed towards New World. But let's speak to the truth of the state of the game right up front. Does New World need work? Absolutely. Now, I've already made a video that really details what New World needs to focus in on for the game itself, and I don't plan to restate that here in this video. But what I am willing to do is state plainly that a lot of the bandwagon hate that is tossed towards New World doesn't make sense when you actually look at the MMORPG genre as a whole. And what I plan to do with this video is show you why it doesn't make sense. Not to change your mind specifically, but just to correct what I judge to be misinformation and what continues to dominate the conversation around New World specifically. Let's also be very clear. I think Kira TV, Josh Strife Hayes, and Asmongold all have made excellent points, but I think they're working off an incomplete data set. In fact, being that this video is called Why Everyone is Wrong About New World, I too am working off an incomplete data set. So as human beings, we end up filling in these gaps with our own experiences to make our points. And my point isn't that New World is quote-unquote winning, just that the idea of New World failed or is just a meme doesn't make sense when you look at the whole picture. To package up an example for you, I'd say it's incorrect to say New World failed. This just isn't factual. What would be more correct to say is New World failed me. And this really comes down to an MMO theory of mine, and that there's really something very, very personal about these games, about these MMOs. And even when a company shuts one of these games down, passionate gamers will make their own private servers just to keep the game they want alive. So let me start with this theory of mine of New World that is being actively tested each and every month. I've long speculated that in February and March, they would perhaps be the hardest months for the games and the players, for reasons that should be very apparent to us all, but gamers can be very seasonal, going from one game to the next. Whenever the hype takes them, wherever their interests take them, gamers will go and check those games out. Now, my metric for success for New World has always been not how many players they are playing at the same time, or how many players even leave the game at any one point, but about how New World invites players back into the game. To put it simply, the Final Fantasy XIV model: content, consistency, and communication. So let's take that as the framework for this essay, and let's break down some key points of what I hear others make when it comes to their experiences, filling in the gap for what New World devs are thinking and feeling. So the first error here in thinking is New World failed because it lost over 90% of its player base. New World shattered records with almost 1 million players playing at the same time. This boggled my mind and blew me away personally. Now, this has been the metric that content creators and commenters refer back to over and over again as the sign that New World failed. But what this number doesn't show us is how many players are actively checking out the game for the first time or returning to the game after a break. It just shows us the active players. And for the longest time, over the fall, New World actually still held the number 3 spot on Steam. And that drop actually was consistent with a very seasonal gamer kind of model. Now, as more games come out, and because of the bugs that many players are either burnt out or waiting for new content, basically waiting for the game to invite them back in for any number of reasons. Now, why this metric isn't accurate is actually more rooted into the legacy of the subscription-based model for MMORPGs. A subscription-based MMO almost commands logging in and only playing one game. But as the business model fades and it slowly fades away and changes, MMO players have become more nomadic and less diehard towards any one specific game. At this point, we could rate that as a positive or a negative based off of your personal experiences with MMOs. And I'm going to talk about that later here in this video, but also in another video in the future. So just that's kind of an aside, a little note for you there. So this also presumes that the hype of a new game release is going to retain that very same player base, even with the drop, that it's going to maintain that massive yield in terms of a brand new MMO from an unknown studio, or suffer perhaps obviously less of a drop. But in reality, the facts that actually held on to the players that it has, I think is actually far more telling. And you might wonder why I think that. And I stated this years ago. New World is a brand new IP. There's no nostalgia factor. There's no Final Fantasy or Warcraft or an established IP that can basically keep players invested in terms of the world and the lore for any number of reasons. It's also in a genre that traditionally is best represented 5 years into its life rather than in year one from a studio, and this is kind of the real kicker here, that makes players nervous because we don't really know who they are. Now, I've seen some argue that the player numbers are concerning because other games have been shut down around the same type of population drop. And yes, this has happened before in the history of MMOs. But if you look closely at those other MMOs that did not make it, that are not alive today, really what happened to them is that they didn't do anything different. They were just trying to do what WoW does. And from a funding perspective, they were funded off investment firms wanting that sweet WoW sub money for themselves. And when it looks like, and when the reality that they were faced with is that they're going to need more investment and more time to build up that kind of style, they pulled the plug. This is actually what made Final Fantasy XIV so different from every other game in the second era of the MMORPG. This is what could be the difference in New World, but we just don't know yet because we really don't know the developers. Now for error number 2, this is a little bit of the short note. Error number 3 I think is the most interesting, personally speaking, but let's talk about it. New World is a bad game. That's the thought. I feel this is actually disproven whenever you talk to people who play or have played the game. They all speak to what a wonderful experience they had until, and then insert whatever the issue was, be it leveling, be it PvP, be it PvE. And that, in my mind, actually should be one of the real focal points of the game. Would gamers all want the game to have launched in a better state? I think 100% agree that they would always want the game, especially in MMO, to actually launch and be ready for launch. But what I'm trying to communicate to you here, and what New World has going for it at its core, is actually harder for game designers to make and to deliver. Fun, adventure, and immersion. So when it comes back to the key principles, content, communication, and consistency, I think New World definitely has been failing in the consistency part. I think New World has definitely struggled in the content part, but in the communication part, actually, I'm very impressed with how they've done. Now, could they always do better? Everything I say will always be followed with, yeah, you could always do better, and I'm rooting for you to do better. I think that's my general philosophy among all games out there in the world. But when it comes down to it, like inviting players back, making the game better, fixing whatever that blank until is essentially where, like, can Amazon do it? Well, if they do, then that's awesome. And if they don't, that's a whole other thing for us to explore. Number 3, this is perhaps the thing that frustrates me the most. And I'm not accusing anybody, any content creator, of doing this, but this is something that I see permeate within gaming communities, and it is a personal pet peeve of mine. And it's rooting against the game. Rooting against New World specifically for this video, but I run into it in a lot of games. A lot of gamers are rooting against another game, like that game is going to attack the thing you love. So let's explore this. I think that this is the idea that personally upsets me the most. And to be clear, I do not think Kara, Josh, Asmin, or any other content creator out there is rooting for failure. But I find this persistent in comments on videos, online, on social media, and it's the nature, I think, of social media as a gamer and how they communicate and being personally a part of the zeitgeist that can perhaps be a lot of fun, but ideas can get set, and that is one of the reasons why I wanted to make this specific video. You can meme on me all you want for sure. If AGS shuts the game down, there are going to be those who actually don't watch this video and assume what it's going to say. They're going to say, hey, see, Brian, he got this wrong. But that's really not what this video is about. But anyway, you do what you do. This is a public dialogue here. But when I see gamers obviously rooting against these good games, or any game, good or bad, I feel like they're rooting against their own self-interest, just to be a part of some community or some movement, or just to be a part of something. And perhaps it's a better commentary on the state of social media completely, but we can explore that in another video if needed. Now, to fix this mindset, I think it could be as simple as sending the thought, or kind of appending your thought with, but I hope they can make it better. I think this is the best part of Kira's video personally, because as it's hard, if you like MMOs, we should want more MMOs, not less MMOs. And I want to spend more time on that idea alone. And so I'm going to actually save that for a future video I'm working on called The Third Age of the MMORPG. If you are interested, hopefully you'll enjoy that one. I think it's very exciting. But anyway, back to kind of this key part. New World has set positive and negative records, to be clear, over the last year. But I do find myself personally logging each and every chance I get. And this has me hoping that we're going to see a future for this game, because not only do I personally enjoy it, but it also raises the bar of what the MMORPG could be. And if New World succeeds, personally speaking, I think everybody wins. But that's not up to me, and that's really not up to you. It's honestly all on the devs. And this is really, I think, more than anything they need is time. They need time, and they need to continue to focus and obviously deliver a good game. So obviously, if you're not enjoying New World, go find something that you love to play. That's what I'm always going to encourage. But if you're ever curious about the state of the game, you can always ask me how it's going. Now, I believe New World's hardest challenges lie ahead of it, and that's actually going to be one of the most interesting things around the narrative and the conversation of this game. I think that the concept of content, consistency, communication is going to really be put into test over the next couple of months, if not years. I don't know what Amazon is doing. But at the same time, they've got something really special, and if they know how to play their cards right, they could actually do something really, really incredible for gaming and for the genre. Now, I don't know. They could also do something horrible. There's a lot of speculation because as people, we're doing that very thing that I talked about at the start of the video. We're filling in gaps with our own personal experiences. But at its core, I think New World has something special, and I'm rooting for the devs. I hope that they can continue to make it better. But pretty much in the meantime, I think for me, I'm just going to be sitting here fishing, selling my wares, helping gamers clear content, and making videos for you guys here on the internet. Those are my thoughts. I really appreciate your time. If you made it to the end of this video, you are a legend, and thank you so much. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, any which way, hitting like, comments, all of that stuff helps the video out in and of itself. That's going to give us the most interesting perspective from a lot of different gamers. And I know that a lot of people aren't necessarily going to like the video, and I'm going to challenge them that if they don't like the video and they made it to this point, sound off with hooty hoo, hooty hoo 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 hoo. Something ridiculous, just so that I know that you're not somebody who just, I don't know, doesn't actually get educated, doesn't actually listen to words, and forms opinions that are misinformed and continues to spread misinformation. We'll find out. That's my challenge. That's my dare. Anyway, guys, that's it for me now. I love you guys. Love your faces. Thanks to you so much for your time. And until next time, take care.
Yeah. It's time to chill out on the couch and read some comments. That's right. You know me when it comes to Destiny. I'm off with a clan, and I'm glad you're feeling better.